Welcome to the Becoming a Streamer podcast by Pipeline, where we dive into your favorite streamer stories to learn more about who they are today and how they got there. I'm your host, co-founder of Pipeline, Stone Mountain 64, and today we're sitting down with NitroLukeDX. This man actually has a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers, a whole team behind it, creating Minecraft shows. He actually branched into Facebook gaming a few years back now, though, and has absolutely dominated the FPS scene, growing his channel to now over 750,000 followers. He also created Overwatch League, which is an esports gaming arena, a physical place that you can go to that hosts parties, tournaments, and literally so much more. Every time I talk to him, I feel like I learn so much more. It's an awesome conversation. Honestly, this could have been 2 or 3 hours long. He's a fantastic guy, has so much to say. If you want to check him out, head over to fb.gg/NitroLukeDX. And if you enjoyed this podcast, share it with a friend who would also enjoy it. Without further ado, enjoy the episode. Luke, dude, thank you so much for joining on the podcast today. Excited to have you on.
God love it, baby.
Dude, I had to just throw that sound effect in there because that's the type of thing I do every day, bro.
Yeah, dude, I remember I rated you and you had a whole like skit ready. Like it was mind-blowing, dude. The content level.
Was it the most recent one, or was it like a year ago? Probably.
No, it was when you ate a banana on the stream and your mom packed you the lunch. It was like,
mate, times are tough, okay? Yeah, and you literally, I was eating a banana when you came into the stream, so I thought, why not just make it a little bit more exciting? I don't know if you're going to show a clip or anything like that, but like, nah, it was good times where, it got us that date right on the following Friday. You were like, man.
Everybody thought it was hilarious. It was great. I want to kind of get an idea, before we get too deep in everything, I like to start with where are you at now with your content? Because looking at everything you've done, you got a lot of stuff even going on today. You've come a long way in content creation from what I've seen. I'm sure it's even deeper than what I know at a surface level. So where are you at with creating content now? Like what platforms are you on? What are you focusing on overall?
I mean, obviously that's a massive question.
Because, you're doing a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so you as well, in the industry, and also you got to look at it as where, you're from YouTube as well as a background. You've got a successful channel, but obviously when I started on YouTube too. I was there around about the 2007 time, but I never uploaded until about 2010. Doing my 10 videos that year, progressing upwards to try and do like 30 in the year. And then obviously one thing led to another. But my first ever starting point on YouTube was doing Grand Theft Auto up until 10,000 subscribers. I then packed that in and then I went, right, this isn't what I want to do, because admittedly back then it was a very fierce dog eat dog world. Not that it isn't now, but it was on a scale that was just like GTA wasn't a nice place to be in. So I went Minecraft, and I associated with a lot of the top sort of Minecraft individuals at the time by building for them, got my way in there, and then suddenly slow taught myself through YouTube in itself how to do like Sony Vega and edit and stuff. But honestly, answering your question, so I don't diverse too much, is I've got a company called Overworld, right? And that was invented because I went to a gaming event in the UK, which is a little bit like PAX, but nowhere near on the same scale or size. And I periodically had to meet different requirements to be able to be involved on panels and things. And I found it a little bit difficult because everyone else had already kind of reached where they needed to be. And I kept having to beat these different criterias every 6 months for some reason, because I don't know, they didn't quite understand the influencer industry as much back in 2013. And I would basically meet the criteria and they would be like, oh, sorry, dude, you're 2,000 subscribers off. And I'd be like, what's going on? I want to be involved in these things. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and try and start this thing by myself with a couple of close friends. So we started this company and this organization called Overworld. And basically it converted these Minecraft shows into theater. And then we had these theater shows that went up and down the country in the UK. And it was based on a show on a series on Minecraft that I had called Survival Madness Adventures. And essentially it was like made on creative, so you were allowed to use all like the gimmicks and cheat codes and stuff like that to build the world, and then you actually had to act in said world as of like a TV show. And it also got put on Amazon Prime, which was quite cool because we were one of the first kids sort of like Minecraft shows on there. And that all went coincide together. So Overworld was invented, and then essentially from doing these Minecraft shows, we created an actual like, you know, come in, have birthday parties, like a LAN center. It was about 1,300 square foot. And it was like now an official business.
Wow.
And then obviously we started these different divisions, one called eAble, which with the stars, we can go into a little bit more detail in shortly if you want to know more about it, where all the stars go towards Game for Autism and Disabled Children so they can play competitively in video games. But originally it was so that they could come to the establishment completely for free because they couldn't, you know, necessarily fund it. So the stars and all that infrastructure was to fund that implement when I was partnered with Facebook. Prior, we obviously had different like schools, you know, different sorts of groups that would fund that element, and they'd come in and there's birthday parties, and it was just like pay and play. And then we upgraded to in a mall or a shopping center, and then we were like to franchise it out, and it was all going all the way that it needs to go, and it still kind of is. It's just COVID-19 is kind of like the direction of everything, because people are very here in the UK especially, they're very reluctant to go out into the shopping centers or the malls because they don't want to get sick or anything like that. And the business model in retail has kind of changed. So we're going to change it to where, like, you know, like a Costco, you kind of drive to an establishment and you go there and you get out of your car and you go there. It's not like a shopping mall where there's like multi-purpose things.
The dedicated.
Yeah, a dedicated place. Yeah, so that's what we're doing now, is we're opening these dedicated areas, more on a smaller scale instead of a shopping center or a mall. And essentially it is what you can imagine. It's a LAN center with birthdays and events and eAble attached to it, even more so now due to me being partnered by Facebook. Apologize for it being the longest story ever, but there is essentially, Overworld is like my baby, and that's my company. But that in itself allows us to do all these different crazy things. So for example, one last thing we have attached to it is, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't, like, I'm a part of it, but I haven't really done it. It's our education system. So we actually have an esports like qualification where people can get like in the UK, like a proper City and Guilds qualification. I didn't do it. Admittedly, I have a very good team behind me that, you know, I funded it, and they're there and they're turning up. Like at the moment, we've got like 10 members of staff in this building that are like doing it. And I'll be honest, that I just thought it was a cool idea. And I'm fortunate to have good support network of like a family. So they're all kind of interconnected. And when I'm asleep, there's someone working and all this stuff happening, basically.
Yeah. Basically. That's awesome, because you're running still your YouTube channel as well, right?
That's correct, but I'm not actually running it anymore. I've got a team running on it because that YouTube channel, Minecraft, when Mr. Trump decided to change the Data Protection Act for kids, which was fine, it kind of changed the monetization massively on a huge scale for kids content. And that basically just kind of, I don't know how it affected it, whether it be with the algorithm, but the financial side of it definitely removed incentive. But you don't want to kill a 1 million+ subscriber YouTube channel, especially when you're speaking to a brand or anything like that. You need to have the proof that there's show of life on the content. So yeah, it plods along, but I would say that I do miss YouTube. I would, you know, like that was such a creative aspect of how I am as a person, and I was able to just do a lot of different things that I'm not so much doing now, because that grind mentality of like Facebook and streaming in general, you know, let's say you're only getting paid hypothetically if you're live. The second you're not live, you're not getting paid sort of mentality. I enjoy streaming more than YouTube, but I will say that there's definitely there's massive differences in between the two, both important. How do you manage that? And then, you know, everyday life sort of thing at the same time.
Yeah. And when you're making that transition then to doing Facebook content and getting in on that, like, What was that like for you? Because you're streaming on Facebook all the time. Like, how much are you streaming on Facebook currently per month or so?
I try and do 8 hours a day, so it's like a 9 till 5, to treat it respectfully of a job, and then on top of a few hours here and there with Overworld. But no, I think what it is that I wish there was more time at all times. I wish it was like a 30-hour day,
Yeah.
or something like that. You could take a nap in between and then wake up and come and do some more or something. It's not necessarily like there's so much to look about with Facebook. When I got partnered on Facebook, I never knew and thought I would ever get partnered, right? Because I was part of Studio 71, the network on YouTube, and I had a guy that was saying, Luke, Facebook America sort of thing, they're looking to partner people, and I wasn't part of Studio 71 UK. I was part of the American team, so it was almost like back then everything was in limbo, so people didn't really know how the partnership process was definitive.
Interesting.
So they kind of threw channels at like, yeah, pick this guy, yeah, and the American teams and whatnot were like, yeah, maybe, no, he doesn't do this, he does this. And at the time I was doing Minecraft. They weren't looking for Minecraft at all.
Yeah.
So I got an email from a charity called War Child, which supports children in war-torn countries like Iraq and stuff, where their families are no longer here or in trouble. And essentially, I got an email where they were like, hey, Luke, we've seen your content. This is War Child, not Facebook. They were like, hey, Luke, we've seen your content. We'd love for you to come down to Facebook HQ in London and do this free sort of like show where you can help raise awareness. And admittedly, I'll say this straight, it wasn't for me to come and bring my audience. It was for me to add added value to the comedians that were employed, like famous UK comedians were there playing video games alongside an influencer. And then it kind of like was down to War Child to make the campaign good. So it wasn't the other people's success necessarily to make it popular. It was kind of War Child's already success to make a great campaign. Really weird, but really cool.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate enough to be picked. So I went there. Obviously, remember, it's charity, so it was completely free. And a lot of people turned it down. It was like, oh, I'm too busy and all that. And I was like, fine, I'm good. Do this. I don't know what's going to come of it. I didn't think or comprehend anything. And I met a guy, the partner manager that originally partnered me, and we had something in common, which I think, honestly, if I had to look in the mirror and go, perfect timing, did this help towards it? Yes. He had an obsession with Halo, and so did I. Like, that's my absolute favorite thing ever is Halo. And we basically were talking about this achievement called the VidMaster achievement, where you could get this thing called the Recon helmet on Halo 3, and gamer score was 0, and you had to go across Halo ODST, Halo 3, and I think it might have been Halo Reach at the time, and you had to intertwine different achievements that were completely 0 gamer score, but the hardest to do. And we had this like conversation for like 30 minutes, and obviously at the time the UK team wasn't quite or partnerships or influencers or whatever didn't really exist. So I guess even though I was doing Minecraft, he said that I didn't meet his criteria for the numbers and things like that for the original first sort of secondary wave of the UK team partnerships. But because I turned up, did the War Child thing with the comedians. He thought the content was good from my end, from my YouTube background experience. We had something in common. So he found it easy to work with me. He said, Luke, I'm going to give you a shot. But you need to meet this criteria in order to be accepted. And it wasn't difficult, but it was difficult for someone that didn't have, when it was a kids audience and it was from YouTube to Facebook. But admittedly, fortunately, I had the Overworld shop thing. So every parent that week that had come through the establishment, I told them this time, this place. And admittedly, I'd say it was a bit of luck. But because I was never going to meet the criteria, trust me. But what I did was I utilized real people, and I had about 400 people on my first stream, on my test stream. Yeah. Just because I was able to like cleverly utilize people to actually guarantee. And he was like, on his end, he was like, how did you do this? And I'm like, yeah, easy, whatever.
I'm just the best.
Yeah, something like that. And really, in the back end, I was just utilizing a clever process to get in part of Facebook. So no, Facebook's that's how I got partnered, by the way.
That's awesome. And so you came onto Facebook then. I mean, because I knew you had a bunch of experience on YouTube, but transitioning that audience over, this was a really brand new audience that you were building on
100%.
Facebook when you started streaming there.
100%. Yeah. It was just the way that when I built Overworld, the reason why it's called Overworld
Mhm.
is to involve as many people as humanly possible and work with as many people, good, bad, or indifferent. It didn't matter at the time. It was just to sort of like meet people and create opportunity, and basically moving over with a fresh audience, which was kind of weird because people were like still ask me to this day, how did that work? How did you manage to transition Minecraft over? And I just say I didn't. I just
Right.
kind of
Just
used the dynamics of my experience to convert from nothing to something, and that's what I did with Call of Duty. And obviously, fortunately, I hope being quite good at it, that helped out too.
yeah, I mean, because you started on Blackout, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, I started on Fortnite because it worked a little bit well with the kids that were coming to the shop because they were allowed to watch the Fortnite. And then I would say maybe the algorithm and things like that worked. And then I was like, new battle royale. I wanted, when I would go to these events, I didn't enjoy being that dude. Was like, I'm quite extroverted, right? And a lot of the Minecraft people, I'm not saying that they're not extroverted, but I know a lot of them that aren't, right? And I
Sure.
would be like, hi, pleased to meet you. My name's NitroLukeDX. And I would be so forward that I might have been like a bit, whoa, like a bit crazy for them. But when with the Call of Duty lot, again, there's loads of introverted people, which is fine. But I just felt I fitted better there. So I always, wanted to be known as a guy that could play 15 plus games, 18 plus, so that I could just go well with my own audience. So that's kind of why I went over and transitioned into like older content.
And was it already at that time that you were like, you had the team that was working on the Minecraft content? What was that transition like for you, kind of coming away from doing some of the Minecraft and really focusing on streaming?
At first I only did like 4 hours and stuff like that, 2 hours to 4 hours. And then I worked my way up. Admittedly, my partner manager at the time had a really good way of like getting the best out of me, I'd say, for them,
Yeah.
which now I'm appreciative of. At the time I was like, oh my God, too much. But I actually only had like one editor, but I wasn't uploading as much content. And also Minecraft didn't have the Windows 10 edition and all these different variables and stuff. So the direction was kind of easy for us to copy and paste similar styles of content. There would be a skim pack of Toy Story that would come out and you would just sort of rehash the same style of content. Kids don't really notice and you just copy the same dynamics. It wasn't easy, but
Right.
after doing it for years, it became,
You had that skill set. You had that format down of, what worked for the audience.
100%. Yeah.
And so when you built up a new audience on Facebook, then like this is you pretty much starting completely over, right? Yeah, sure, you got a little bit of a juiced head start, right? But or that helped you kind of get the snowball rolling on it. But was that a different skill set for you, like getting into streaming? Like you started with 4 hours, like I guess compared to doing recorded video content, like how was that transition like for you getting into streaming more so?
Okay, so obviously incentives and things like that, and trying to make sure that you're always in the front seat. But my way of explaining it is that everything's about perfect timing and things like that. And at the time, as you know, competition wasn't exactly hot. Facebook were trying to come up with different strategies to try and incentivize you to be playing certain games, trying different techniques. And I want to just say loosely that I know you have access to speaking to some engineers, and we do too, of helping to give feedback, and they love that feedback, right? And when you give them that feedback, they sometimes will guinea pig test you for something, and they might go, right, we're going to try this, this technique
Sure.
on process. And they'll put you out there. Maybe on that one-time test, they might excel you a little bit more out there, because after all, you're partnered for a reason, because you've done the grind as it is, you've put those years in.
Sure.
You're paying and partnered, right? So they invest that time and into you. And I felt that I was given that opportunity where, because I had been picked and partnered, I did feel like at the beginning stages, I was open to these guinea pig tests, which did, I'd say, enhance opportunity to be able to reach a bigger audience quicker. But obviously there's still dynamics. There's still a tick list. Now, they don't give you that tick list. I'll say this open-mindedly. They just kind of vaguely give you the tools, and they allow you to build it. There is a I would say, a definitive process on, for example, I've always said this when I was growing YouTube channels that were kids content or trying to convert people into kids content. I'd say, would someone subscribe to you for swearing? And they would go, someone go, what do you mean? I'd go, well, would someone click on your channel and because you said the F-bomb, would they go, I'm subscribing to that channel? And all of a sudden they were like, no, they probably wouldn't. I mean, they would with the humor and the flow on and how you execute it.
Sure.
But there was this process. So I'd say that, Facebook, that was a process that helped that area at the right time. My experience with YouTube helped this area to be able to convert views and understand algorithms and tagging and not to spam, but as well, also asking the right questions helped out massively. And that's why obviously things like yourself pipeline and, I guess to my extent, Overworld, I was always able to ask enough questions without pissing someone off and being able to go, does that work? Does that not work? For example, a lot of people don't know by having the word Facebook in your description, in your live stream, can, if you're not careful, act as spam and completely choke your views from going out there. Even to the point where people don't actually know that you can't have a PayPal link and all these other things like that in your descriptions on your streams. Otherwise, they'll again choke the view hold. Now that person, that content creator could have been doing everything right. The stars could have aligned for at least 6 months. And he's gone, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this PayPal challenge or something. Instantly, he doesn't know it, but he could have just stopped himself from meeting his next threshold. So no, I would say being a part of the process earlier on, meeting the right people and having experience, like years and years, over 10 years plus experience. I was fortunate enough to know and spot the signs of a lot of mistakes. Like a real quick example, like in 2012 on YouTube, a lot of people that, trust me, people know and watch now, they did this thing called the metadata spam. And what it was is, this is the AliAs of the world and things like that and all that. And by the way, they were all fortunate enough to all know each other at the time when they were really young. And they basically would take the title of the video and they would copy and paste that title 20 times in the description, and that was called metadata spam. And what it would do is it would literally force the algorithm to put you at the top with the person with the most titles spammed again would force you at the top. And this went unnoticed for about 1.5 years. But your KSIs, your syndicates, your AliAs, they knew this. They knew it so early on. And by the way, they were still good curators. They didn't just upload rubbish. It's just they, again, right time, right place. And that's not to deter anyone that might be listening or watching, that you have to be at the right time and right place. And what you need to do is, when I said about Facebook with the tick boxes, you need to try and envision what those hypothetical tick boxes are and try and steer yourself into that direction. And hopefully it might just, like a fish on a hook, you might get snagged, and or you might put yourself open to that snag or that hook. And that's what I took from YouTube.
And when you've been going on, streaming for this, you started on Fortnite. Like, how was that transition and like any of your content strategy shifting as you've been doing it? Like, have you been doing any, obviously you were big on YouTube. Did you do any video content? Have you been utilizing any of that on Facebook or even on YouTube, trying to do another channel around the content that you're now creating? Is that anything you're considering?
I'll be honest, I didn't really push my YouTube content over based on, just anxiety, really. Just the fact that I wanted to try and do it from a fresh start because it was a younger audience. I didn't feel that the audience were over on Facebook from YouTube. I didn't push it because I wanted a blank slate. And even though I was doing a bit of Fortnite actually at the time, it was all very much like on theater mode, really weird kids' voices. I would just like make up on the spot, like Family Guy sort of weird stuff. And it didn't convert. It really didn't. And I was very honest about it. I probably could have utilized the conversion higher. But like I said, Overworld and face-to-face people helped the Fortnite, being and opening that store really pushed that beginning stage, might have pushed the algorithm really nicely. And then through just being,
God level
sort of branding, which by the way, God level isn't a god, it's a difficulty setting, of just like being on the top tier difficulty. I just made it work. And I guess again, years of experience, the
We
stars aligned with that.
I you're a very good player as well though. And I know I saw that in Call of Duty and but like as you've transitioned between and through games, is that like I mean, I remember you streaming, you had like the god level hat, right? Like
Mm.
you had like that, and then you just dominate in Modern Warfare or whatever. But like how was that like even transitioning between games? Did your audience, as you're building this newer audience or whatever, like are they following you as you're going through it? Like how has that experience been like as you've been streaming?
I think what it is to always be it's like Madonna. She would always reinvent herself. She's still relevant. She's been popular since like 80s and things like
Mhm.
that. She's still around now. Use that as a bit of an icon, is being able to reinvent yourself. Except in the industry of like video games and influencer marketing, reinventing yourself could be every month, every week, or like every quarterly. And by the way, like to disrespect, even though he doesn't put a different clothing set on, he still reinvents himself through like challenges or like coming up with different ways to try and build a movement, like a story, like a series,
Yeah.
things like that. And I would say that I've just always had something, whether it be with the tournaments, and then you'd sort of like absolutely squeeze all of that out of the way. And then you'd be like, right, what do I do now? And then I was like, okay, I'm going to focus more on EABLE because that's a good thing, where, again, we raise money for Gaming for Autism and Disabled Kids. How can I make that even more? And then you squeeze that. COVID-19 throws a curveball because you're like, people don't have as much to donate for stars and things like that. So I don't want to milk that. So I'm like, okay, I want to keep doing that, but I need another story. I need another thing to be able to keep working positivity. And that might be being the best in the world at the game, hypothetically speaking, and then you work towards that. It's always trying to come up with different ways to push your audience. And it is easier said than done when you could be sitting in front of 10 viewers and you're like, how do I get from 10 viewers to 30 and then make this agenda be more worthwhile? And it's, I guess, again, being able to understand when and what is valuable at the time.
Right.
Like I've been playing video games since I was 2 years old, right? And playing Resident Evil 2 and one with my dad, which was kind of crazy since it was like an 18 game at the time. It's got zombies and stuff. And I would just play video games. And I will also say that I was so probably low-key addicted to video games as a kid that I probably didn't do very well at education. I struggled at school because, I would get bullied and things like that at school in the very beginning. And I just so used gaming as a form of escapism. I have for example, people's forms of escapism could be drugs, alcohol, whatever. Mine was gaming, and I basically put all my energy into playing video games and being good at them and going for achievements and things like that from such a young age that I if you said to me, Luke, did you think you were going to do well in the gaming industry? I tell you in your face, yes, because I made it happen. And I was there at the right time because I made sure I was there at the right time because of, again, probably being addicted. And whether or not you know this as well, I'm autistic. So like that autistic superpower has probably come in my favor by being so, again, extroverted, which hasn't helped me as well when I've met people in real life. I've probably put them off sometimes because I'm so forward on that, passionate about my content. And I've gone through my phases of looking at the numbers as well back in the day and being like anxiety because the views aren't enough, which as I've got older and years experience, been able to offset that nicely and always being able to come up with a new idea, almost hitting that creative next step. There isn't a next step. I'm kind of making it up as I go along, but at the same time, I'm aware that you can't just sit on the autopilot stream where you
Yeah.
just kind of go, I just got my coffee now, I'm gonna play a bit of Tarkov, and then you do a bit of that. You can do that
Sure.
when the game's new, yeah. But then 5 days down the line, you got to be like, might need a cup of tea instead of a coffee, and then you might need to go when you know that your favorite landing spot in Fortnite is Tilted Towers, but you know what? It's your favorite and you're itching to land there, but you're like, I have to go somewhere different and I have to do this gun challenge. And maybe you get a different influencer on board just to change the dynamics. But then hold on a minute, you're like, whoa, I like this new change. And all my chat's liking this new change. Now you got to go with it. And instead of being comfortable, which is so bloody difficult, you've got to roll off with this new process, for sure.
And when you're starting out with even like going back to YouTube, right? What
Yeah.
was your I guess like obviously big into gaming, like how did you start to get involved in that? And was there like any like first significant break that you had on the YouTube, like when you're very first getting into creating content in that front?
All right. Okay.
Or was it
Right.
something
So
that you always were like, even when you were younger,
I've
like
got
trying
it.
to figure out ways to
I've,
make
I've
content?
got this, and it's quite funny, yeah, because like I said, I did GTA to begin with, and being like at the time, 17, 16, something like that, doing GTA, messing around with that. There was this process, like there was always techniques, right? Always techniques to grow your YouTube channel. And often it was like a cheeky way of growing it, not cheating, because that's exploit. It was always like a cheeky way. So the way that it was cheeky was people found glitches to how to get your online character money on GTA. And they had these things called shark cards where you had to buy real in-game currency, and it's made Rockstar so much money. And we knew a process called the DNS glitch, which would basically glitch your character to get an infinite amount of money. Now, YouTube channels were getting banned for this, right? But we're talking about the 100Ks at the time. Now, I was like a kid, sort of like dumb mentality. I was like, oh, I'm going to get on this DNS glitch thing and get you all this money. So I'd sit there in the garage in GTA and be like, yo, guys, I'm joined with my, whatever with the time. We're going to give you loads of this money if you hit the subscribe button. And it was, and they were like, and all these kids were like, oh my God, $3 million. And then you would literally, the video go up and I only did it for a week. And hour later, you have 1,000 more subscribers. And you were like, whoa, we got to 10,000. And we were like, as kids or younger, would be like, oh my God, these channels are getting deleted. And you get put on the Rockstar blacklist as well, where you would never be involved with Rockstar stuff. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God. So I deleted all my GTA stuff. I was on about like $400 a month at the time. So I was like, well, like a bit sad about it. And I was like, no, I'm going to go full send it and go straight into Minecraft. I did know a few people and now, that led to where I am now. There's loads of different thought processes as well within Facebook. There's a few points that I want to like look into about like thought process of how to grow a lot of streamers and stuff. Because I know a lot of streamers, come to me and go, Luke, how do I grow my content? And I'm very passionate about like trying to grow up and coming streamers, whether or not I'll play with anybody, but I want to grow up and coming streamers, just because I remember the terminology cock block on what I had in the YouTube industry. And I think I put it up on Twitter and you replied to it. This might have led to why you chose for me to come on Pipeline and involve the podcast myself to your podcast.
Not necessarily, but this was a really cool thing that I saw you talking about on Twitter, and it's a fantastic idea, I think, in general.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm glad it wasn't just that. I'm glad that you thought naturally it was good at Call of Duty.
No, I mean, listen, the conversation we've had, this is like every time I've looked up anything that you've done, it's like there's 10 more things that are like that are behind it. I'm like, this is like the level of content is insane.
Well, I'm glad we're able to have such a good conversation, because obviously we've been in the industry for years, and that's where I'll explain the upcoming YouTubers in a sec. When we played about a month ago, and we had Cross, Elite Shot, and yourself and me. If you actually just took a rewind for a minute, and a bit poetic, maybe I'm being a bit cheesy, but we're all YouTube content creators at that exact moment. I know that you're a Facebook guy, and you have your Stone Mountain thing with a voice and stuff, which is really cool, by the way. You've got so many OGs. Like if you added up the years of experience that was in that one room, it's kind of goosebumpy, because it's a lot of years. It's like 30 plus 40 years experience in there. And a lot of people don't realize that, because they think, oh, we all come from Facebook. But if anyone ever goes back and watches that, whether or not they find it or not, and you listen, you there's this almost poetic, I don't know, YouTube senses kicked in. Something about it. There's a different. I'm not saying that you're a different person if you're YouTube, but there's this different art form of conversation. Okay, and it flowed so good. I miss that, by the way. Like, not the fact that we as human beings played, more that the art form of knowing that the camera has switched on, and don't be deterred by that, people that might be listening, that it is a little bit, there's elements of fakeness, but it's all authentic when you've got that experience there. But it's that lights, camera, action, and it was there on that particular style of games. It was so easy, the chemistry was right. And even to the point with when I was playing, I wasn't just playing the game in your autopilot, like, I'm going to kill the lobby. It was like, I now need to let Stone have his conversation. But it was without being really literal. It was this poetic flow. And I'll be honest with you, it does take years to get that, but you instantly know that spark works there. And I miss that style of content because I know the guys that are from Facebook, they're new to influence stuff. And in 5 years and 6 years time, a lot of these guys will be where I'm explaining now. And I'm not talking about being at followers. It's simply just knowing when that chemistry flow. But when you've got a lot of years experience, whether or not you like or dislike the person, admittedly, you can just tune straight into it. And I felt like that session that we had was one of my favorite, just because of that, whatever that thing is, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And like, just the entertainment value on top of whatever, you know, we're playing a game. Yeah, but we're entertaining. And like, how do we make, it's almost like improv comedy or like improv, whatever, in a lot of sense. It even feels like, but you're talking about, you know, helping or your advice for streamers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Growing up and becoming streamers, you know, that in itself has been like a massive mystery on how you do that, because there are so many right ways of doing it. And there's so many ways to get to the same destination. There's so many thought process and what you do's and you don'ts. And, you know, I'd look at it as many different ways of getting to the same destination. But I will say that it's better to be positive when looking to grow a streamer or even yourself. You know, I have seen streamers, which is good to see for experience purposes and note down not to do, where people create this God complex of a fictitious hierarchy of they are at this particular level. So you need to get in this lane of command, like almost that you're in a regiment or an army, that, you know, you've reached this rank. So therefore, you know, there's a process. You know, I'm very much a guy that doesn't go through those process. There's a process, but not really. I want to be able to go and change the psychological step of it, because I want to basically empower other people to feel good about the grind or going the long route, or whether it's the right or bad route. I want people to feel good that they can know that they can make it, because by the way, anyone can make it. There are hurdles where if you tag something wrong, or, you know, you put the PayPal link, you are going to stop yourself from growing, because, you know, it doesn't work in the terms and conditions of the tick box of Facebook or something. There are things that unfortunately people don't ask the right questions or know about it. I mean, you got to do your homework anyway as a streamer if you want to grow. But what I look at it is I want to approach streamers and do the other thing. I want to surprise them and they go, whoa, why is this high follower number? Even though to me, I'm just like, yeah, it's just normal. But to them, they're like, whoa, why is this dude, you know, helping me? I'm not necessarily going, hello, I know who you are and I've watched everything you've done. No, I'm just going, right, I'm seeing it as part of the job to have this trickle down economy sort of thing, where I now need to go out my way and help that person, but not like once a week, like every day. What can I do to help them? And not with just a raid. Raids are lovely, but raids in a way are just a dump of your audience, which can be good, but I don't like that all the time. I want to be able to play with that person, you know, and give them some views and make my audience see that you know, I'm playing with them and that they'll feel good about me doing that, which is good, but they'll also, their audience and their up and coming community will feel good and they'll also feel good. So it's like this circle of just goodness, which is really weird and cheesy, but it's this psychological positive area where you can just boost their content. They can get some feedback in the process. And I think growing streamers in general, there are so many ways of doing it, but there is a lot of reluctancy because the industry does create fear in, if I play with said name, will I lose that person because he's all mine? All these viewers are mine, they're all mine. And that was probably created more in the YouTube industry more than anything, because there is a lot of monopoly and things like that happen in phases of like tagging algorithms. But I'd say that Facebook's a little bit different, streaming's a little bit different in general. But that mentality is really difficult because you know, when you've got a big donator or someone like that might donate to you every day of the week, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've introduced him to this another amazing content creator, and then he's not in there in your chat anymore, he's donating to this other amazing content creator. People might be like, oh my God, you've stolen my human from my chat. And really, you know, there's thousands and millions of people to go around, and really we just need to work together, not necessarily be friends with everyone, because it's just not human nature.
Right.
But you know, to work together to make the platform so big that there is just an infinite number of human beings that, you know, it doesn't matter as much. But that in itself is such a, that's a whole podcast in itself. That's a whole story in itself. You know, and you also have to be so clever and experienced to be able to have that conversation in the industry. Otherwise, you're going to really say something you don't want to say. And a lot of people are reluctant to have those conversations because you say the wrong thing. You're like, whoa, you just said you're all going to fail. Or you have to just know not to say the wrong thing, which I can tell a lot of people are reluctant to have those conversations live, because it's a difficult one, because you don't want to upset anybody, because they are putting a lot of time, and sometimes money and things like that, that they might not have, to try and make the dream come true, you know. But no, I'm very passionate about just coming up with different ways to try and make those guys feel welcome to be a part of the industry, and just know that there are processes and there are ways of growing, but you know, it's okay to be able to just do a bit of homework and things like that, and ask around and ask another streamer. I wouldn't say necessarily add them on your personal Facebook and ask them 1,000,000 to 1 questions, because that can get really difficult. Because I get that a lot at the moment, and I would say that, you know, like there is a lot of ways to grow, and don't ever worry about someone telling you that you're not going to grow, because if you do the work and not the grind doesn't necessarily need to be there all the time. Just know that there are obstacles that you could beat without worrying about the fact that, you know, you have to act in a certain lane. That's what I'm trying to explain, that there's so many ways to grow, that there's not a one way, but there is a way. That makes sense.
Is it like working smarter, not harder? Finding the right ways to work?
Yeah, there's a lot of right ways to work, but the painful thing is sometimes people don't have the right support networks to work smarter, because, you know, they're passionate about gaming, or they're very good at the game, but they don't know how to act in a certain way, or they don't know what to say, or what they can and can't not, and what they can tag, and what there's not really a great thing out there. What it is to be able to know who to surround yourself with, or an area to surround yourself with, and just try and get as much information with you sitting back and watching and obtain the information, and then test it, and then try and make it work. It's not easy. It's not easy. I think that's the grand scale of it, is that it's not easy, and nor should it be. And throughout this whole big conversation that we've had, there are so many ways and people that you know. The stars need to align the right place for algorithms and things like that. But I don't want to scare people. I just want to say that you need to get the dynamics and the basics right. And that is basically, make sure your audio sounds pretty good. Make sure that your video quality is pretty good. Make sure that you don't have a shed load of things on your screen that take away from the game. Because honestly, when the person watches you for the first time, they're there for the game, not for you. And then you convert them to be there for you and not the game. Hence why that's when you get stars, because then they're there for you more than the game. But people just need to almost need this like list of back to basics, color correction, audio, game. What's game? How do you know? And even a little chapter that says, how do you know when this game's really dropping off? And how do you know when to return to it? And what's a basic title? And it's all these basics, back to basics, and then being able to enhance your interpretation on how to build your own community, but from the basics. And I'll be honest with you, some people get 70% of the basics right, and they go 70% that way, but they're missing that extra 30%. And until they go ding, which they might not get, because they've got the tree right in front of them. Yeah, they don't see the woods, and that's why it's difficult. That's I guess why the people will be listening to this now going, Luke, what the hell are you going on about? Like, yeah, and I do diverse. It's very difficult to try and get out what I'm trying to explain sometimes, just because I want to make sure that I can embark the thought process into your head, rather than people getting the notepad go down and saying, Luke said, don't look at tree in front of you, look at woods. Yeah.
Sure.
And then, and I want that person to understand that, what does he mean? And then they figure that out.
Sure. Yeah, listen, we're going a little long here. I do want to wrap it up. If people want to check you out, and no, it's great. Like this is exactly what I want to try and provide, is allow, people like yourself to be able to talk about their story, talk about their insights, talk about what they've learned in this, because like this is extremely valuable information, right? Like how many people have come to your stream and have been so grateful when you've talked about any of these things. But, if people do want to come to your stream or see you or anything you're working on, where's the best place to go?
Honestly, it's just NitroLukeDX on Facebook. Just type NitroLukeDX on there. If you want to know a little bit more about like thought processes, Twitter, you want to see pictures of my personal life, Instagram, but anywhere, it's always NitroLukeDX.
Awesome, man. Listen, thank you so much for joining on the podcast. It's been a pleasure having you.
Absolute pleasure, man. And I look forward to having a look back and be like, Luke, why'd you say that? Or Luke, why'd you go on? Just like add 5 more minutes to that bit that you didn't need to go and have. But now it's been a pleasure.
I'm sure people would want to hear more about whatever. Like you got like all these nuggets in there that people like. We could do like a 3-hour podcast about all of this stuff. I
know we could. Yeah.
I try my best to try and keep them so they're more contained episodes, so people can enjoy it while they're on their commute to work or whatever they got going on. But it's awesome info. Maybe we can have you come back on again in the future.
Yeah, maybe in like a year's time or something, like look back in the year.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome, man. Thanks.